There's a specific kind of invisibility that feels like safety, and if you know what I'm talking about, you've already felt it in your bones. You scroll through everyone else's carefully curated moments. You watch their vacations unfold in real time, their opinions crystallize into hot takes, their breakfast aesthetically plated for maximum engagement. But your own profile? It's a graveyard of silence. Maybe just a profile picture from 2 years ago that you keep meaning to update but never quite do. And here's what no one talks about. This isn't laziness, and it's definitely not indifference. It's a psychological defense mechanism so sophisticated that even you might not fully understand why you've built it. The people who don't post on social media aren't just quiet observers. They're operating from a completely different psychological architecture than everyone else. And today, we're going deep inside it. You type something out, maybe a thought that felt profound, maybe a photo that captured something you wanted to share. It felt natural 2 seconds ago, but then you read it back and suddenly it sounds performative, like you're trying too hard, like it's not quite true enough, so you delete it. Or maybe you don't even get that far, because the moment you think about posting, there's this immediate internal recoil, like your entire nervous system is screaming, "Don't be seen like that. Don't freeze yourself into a caption. Don't reduce this three-dimensional moment into something digestible for an audience that doesn't really know you." You feel the gap between what's real and what can be said in 280 characters, and the gap is so wide that posting feels less like sharing and more like lying. Here's another sign. The idea of someone judging the entirety of who you are based on a single post creates this low-grade anxiety that follows you around. You'd rather be a question mark in people's minds than a half-formed conclusion they've drawn from breadcrumbs of curated content. And here's the one that cuts deepest. You've realized that the moment you share something publicly, it stops belonging to you in the same way. The experience gets flattened, the memory becomes a performance you have to maintain, and some part of you refuses to let that happen to the things you actually care about. If any of this is landing right now, you're not broken. You're just wired to protect something that most people have already given away without realizing they've lost it. Here's the counterintuitive truth. People who don't post aren't afraid of being seen. They're afraid of being seen incorrectly. And there's a massive psychological difference between those two fears. There's this concept called self-concept fragility, the fear that other people's perceptions might overwrite your own sense of who you actually are. For people who don't post, this isn't paranoia, it's pattern recognition. You've witnessed how social media collapses human complexity into flat, consumable profiles. How a single opinion becomes your entire identity in someone's mind. How one bad photo becomes the version of you people remember. How vulnerability gets screenshotted and stripped of context. And somewhere along the way, you chose this. I'd rather be unknown than misrepresented. This is why lurking feels safer. You get to remain fluid, not locked into whatever version of yourself you performed last Thursday. You're not managing a brand, you're just existing as a full human being who contains multitudes. Picture this because I know you've lived it. You're at dinner with someone you care about and the moment feels full. Then they reach for their phone. Let me get a picture for my story. Just like that, the moment splits in two. There's the real version you're living, and the curated version that will be consumed by people who weren't there, who will scroll past it in 3 seconds. You smile for the photo, but inside something contracts. Once it's posted, this dinner isn't just yours anymore. It's content, a signal, a data point in someone else's narrative. And later, when you get home, you don't post your own version because your version can't be photographed. It exists in the way the conversation made you feel less alone, in the particular quality of their laugh, in the attention that existed before the phone came out. That's the part you want to keep, and you've learned it dies when it's translated into content. This pattern didn't start with social media. It started earlier, often in childhood. You learned that being fully seen came with consequences. Maybe your emotions were dismissed, your excitement mocked, your vulnerability weaponized, so you developed a filter, and you learned that showing less meant getting hurt less. Then you started noticing the gap between your internal world and how people perceived you. No matter how carefully you explained yourself, people still misunderstood, still projected, still filled, in blanks with assumptions that had nothing to do with your reality. So you stopped trying to control a narrative you were never going to control. When social media arrived and offered you a stage, you'd already learned that stages are dangerous, that visibility is often a liability, that the safest version of you is the one nobody has enough information to judge. And now you've made peace with it. You're not waiting to feel brave enough to post. You've realized that not posting is its own form of integrity. a refusal to participate in a system that profits from flattening you. Here's the part that might sting. The reason you don't post isn't just about other people's judgment. It's about protecting yourself from your own merciless inner critic. You're infinitely harder on yourself than any stranger would ever be. You write that caption and immediately hear your own voice. This sounds desperate. This sounds fake. This sounds like you're trying to convince people you're happy when you're not sure if you are. So you stay silent, because silence can't be scrutinized, can't become cringe in retrospect, can't fail. But here's what that means. You've given yourself an impossible standard where if you can't share something in perfect authenticity, you won't share anything at all. And perfectionism disguised as authenticity is still just perfectionism. You're not protecting your truth, you're protecting yourself from being imperfect and vulnerable in public. But here's the shift. What if the reason you don't post isn't a flaw you need to fix? What if it's actually a coherent response to a system that was never designed for depth? Social media rewards oversimplification because nuance doesn't drive engagement. It rewards certainty because ambiguity doesn't go viral. It rewards people who can reduce themselves into bite-sized, consumable identities. And you can't do that, not because you're incapable, but because you're too aware of how much gets lost in translation. You're not afraid of being seen. You're grieving what gets erased in the process of being seen this way. And that grief is reasonable. It's not social anxiety or insecurity. It's the natural response of a complex person living in a medium built for simplicity. The people who post easily aren't better at being themselves. They're better at editing themselves into something postable, at making peace with the gap between who they are and who they perform. And you've never been able to do that without it feeling like a betrayal. So maybe the question isn't, why don't I post? Maybe it's, what part of me am I trying to keep intact by staying silent? Because that invisible part, the part you refuse to perform, that's not the problem. That might be the part of you that's still free. Remember that invisibility we started with? The kind that feels like safety? It is safe, but it's also a choice, and every choice protects something while closing off something else. You've protected your complexity, your privacy, your right to be more than a profile, and that's rare. But here's what I want you to sit with. You don't owe anyone a post. You don't owe anyone a window into your life, but you also don't owe your silence to fear. If you don't post because it doesn't serve you, because it doesn't align with how you want to move through the world, that's power. But if you don't post because you're afraid of being misunderstood or judged or reduced, that's just a different kind of prison. The people who don't post on social media aren't invisible. They're just refusing to be flattened. And in a world that demands you shrink yourself into a caption, that refusal might be the most honest thing you can do.